Good day to you. I'd like to spend just a few minutes talking about urbanization and urban ministry and the challenges that it presents to us. When we think about the whole area of urbanization of the world, we know that much has changed since the creation of the earth. The growth of the megacities, wow, when you look at 1800, there was only one city over 1 million people, and that was the city of London. By the time we got to 1972, 172 years later, there were over 100 cities with a population of over 1 million on the face of the earth. 13 of them over 5 million and 4 of them over 10 million. By the time we got to year 2005, there were 400 cities over 1 million in population and 65 over 5 million population. Out of the 20 largest urban areas in the world, Tokyo, Japan is the largest with approximately 34.5 million people. When we look at New York City, that's second on the list with 24.4, and down at 8th is Los Angeles at 16.6. So 2 of the cities in the United States are in the world's 20 largest urban areas. When we get to the 10 largest cities in the United States, it's topped by New York, followed by Los Angeles, then Chicago, then Houston. And then we slip down to 8th, we have Dallas, and in 9th, San Antonio. So 3 of the largest cities in the United States are located in the state of Texas. World-class cities. What constitutes a world-class city? It's a city of 1 million or more. And it's a city that has international linkage or international function. And just remember, half of the world's population live in cities. And in fact, most of them live in the 20 largest cities in the world. So what are the urban characteristics? Well, normally they're very complex cultural situations. They're materialistic in their emphasis. Just look around at the cities and you can see that. They're communities that are disintegrating and changing constantly within those metropolitan areas. They tend to be somewhat impersonal, and they tend to be very fast-paced. Some of the challenges that face us in the whole area of the urban ministry is the cultural crisis, the whole area of poverty and violence and oppression and injustice. There's the whole area of, in some cases, the restriction on missionary work that's being done. In other places, it's the revival, if you would, of non-Christian religions in the urban areas. And it's part of the United States as the growth in unbelief or a non-belief in a God in the Western society. There are 2 main barriers to effective urban ministry. One is the barrier of the city itself, or the barriers of the city itself and its environment, or the barriers that we find in the church. Urban ministry, the barriers as far as the city are concerned include the whole ethnic situation, and how do we deal with that, and how do we deal with all the changes that are taking place. There's the structural and the political aspect of the big city, the large city, constantly working on the infrastructure to carry out and provide all the needs and resources that are necessary to move people around a large city. There's a whole area of diversity, and how does the world deal with the great diversity, not only in the ethnicity of people, but in the generational differences, the job-related functions, and the interest of people. The whole aspect of change. Change is constantly taking place in our urban areas and will continue to take place, and people move around within the city itself. There's the impersonal environment that exists. Some of it's driven by fear, some of it's I just want my private space, if you would. And the barriers as far as the church is concerned, we look at that whole aspect of the traditionalized ministry training of our colleges, universities, and seminaries. We continue to train people in a very traditional way. In many cases, with some of the rural emphasis in those training events. There tends to be a rural mentality of a lot of our church leaders. Maybe it's because of our roots in the Lutheran Church and being in the rural area, but we also tend to think in a very rural way. It's really failure also on our part to take advantage of the opportunities that the urban area provides. When you look at the mass of people, the opportunity, the media coverage, and the like. Another barrier as far as the church is concerned is the fear of the city. What's going on there? What's going to happen there? And we always have some concerns in those particular areas. We just really have a lack of understanding of the urban realities and what's going on in those particular areas. And even though we have many of our folks who live in cities, we still don't understand the full reality of what that means. The biblical beginnings of Christianity really were present in the urban centers, and they spread out to other urban centers as well. So how do we begin to develop a model for urban ministry? You know what? There is no specific model that works best. But a couple of things that come to mind, and that's gathering people together in the small groups. It's sometimes easier to bring them together in small groups than it is to bring them together in large, complex areas. I think we have to look at the whole aspect of holistic ministry. In other words, it's not just a preaching of the Word and the sharing of the Word, but it's also helping them deal with the everyday stresses of urban life, and how do we help them reach into themselves and to grow spiritually, as well as meeting some of the needs that they have. We have to learn and continue to learn more about the ethnic background of the individuals that live in the city, and understand that just because they move to a large metropolitan area doesn't mean that they give up their heritage, doesn't mean that they give up what they have grown up with. And how do we understand those cultures? Just as when we send missionaries to foreign countries, we really help them understand the context of the ministry where they're going, and we need to understand very carefully the complex of the ministry where we're at and where we're serving. We have to really work with within the communities, and how do those communities differ from one another around the city, and what are the specific concerns and issues in each one of those committees. And again, it's understanding the context of ministry. It's understanding also the spiritual needs of people. It's understanding that the unchurched people have spiritual needs, whether they're expressed or whether they really are willing to share them. They're searching in life and continue to search for those kinds of things. I don't think there's a model that absolutely works perfectly, and I know we can look at lots of models that are out there today, but I think there are some key aspects that we need to be about as we look at urban ministry. One, I think we need to understand the context of that ministry and the people who live in those various communities in the urban area. I think secondly, we have to become passionate about praying for those different communities within the city, to literally pour our hearts out for those cities with a passion about the lost people who live in those cities. Third, I think we really have to begin to utilize the missionary zeal of some of our outlying congregations to be missionaries to people in the city, to care about the people that are in the city. It's not an easy job, but the Lord's promised to be with us. He's promised to send us people to help reach out. And I think it starts with our prayer. It starts with our regular understanding of what the biblical vision is for spreading the gospel of Christ to all of those across many country and ethnic situations. May the Lord bless and keep us in all that we do to be an urban ministry.